Now, we're starting off with, I think, a really scary story. A global IT outrage swept across the world this morning, from hospitals to airports to banks. Everywhere has been affected. The problem has now been found by IT security firm CrowdStrike, and a fix has been deployed. But should so few companies have so much power across the world? Now, this terrified the life out of me, right? We've all seen this movie, right? Utter chaos, everything goes, planes fall out of the sky. I was actually genuinely worried. It's like, you know, TV stations stop working. Not this one, stay tuned to this one. Daniel, I mean, why are we so over-reliant on technology these days? Everything we do, I mean, it is getting dangerous, isn't it?
We're not over-reliant on technology as such. We are over-reliant on Microsoft. And this should be a turning point when we actually decide to rid the world of Bill Gates. That's what this should all be about.
You hold it him
because the other operating systems, as I understand it, according to these people, Crowd thing, whatever they're called, according to these people, this has not affected OS operating systems for MacBooks or Linux or whatever. This is an attack on Microsoft. And why is Microsoft so dominant? And the answer is, I'm not talking about your personal computer on your desk, because that'll be fine. I'm talking about businesses with huge servers, huge networks, which is what we're really discussing here. Why is it? It's because they are so good at persuading every company in the world that only Microsoft is going to give them the support they want. And everyone crowds round what they think of as the safe standard, when there are other options available to them that they shun. And they should be using those options and developing further options, because there's nothing special about the Microsoft. I mean, there was a dodgy system that was set up in the first place. It used to be called DOS, Dirty Operating System, when it was first established, because it was botched altogether. And it's full of bugs, and this is going to carry on happening as long as the world is totally dependent on Microsoft. We need to rid the world of Bill Gates.
I mean, but whose fault is it, Paul, that we are so reliant on, whether it's Microsoft or another company, so reliant on one company? And the reason this, the CrowdStrike system affected so many people, because it has so many blue-chip companies who subscribe to it.
I think this is clearly CrowdStrike's fault, isn't it, this? And it's insane that we are so reliant on such a small company in this particular case. And it's insane that a company of that size can cause global mayhem on the scale that they've done. I mean, was there no stress testing of this update that was rolled out?
The irony is...
no backup systems?
This system is designed to stop this thing happening.
Well, these are the people who apparently ride to your rescue to prevent you from getting hacked, or to put it right when you've been hacked or when there's been an attempted hack. And actually, how ironic, in a terrible way, that this antivirus company has caused such global mayhem across the globe.
The thing that really worries me, gentlemen, is the fact that, you know, OK, this was a glitch, this was a mess-up, OK?
Yep.
But you don't need to nuke people these days, right? OK, all you do need to do is get hold of one of these systems and then just turn it off, basically. You've got the whole world.
Come back to my point. I'm really making a very serious point about this. Yes, of course, it was they were the one who made the mistake. And mistakes happen that shouldn't have happened. It's amazing that their statement still does not contain a word of apology to the world.
No, that's true.
Incidentally, it's absolutely scandalous. Yeah. But nonetheless, they made the mistake. It shouldn't have happened. There should have been processes that prevented that button from being pressed before they actually went ahead and pressed it. But nonetheless, its effect globally only exists because of the pervasive domination, the quasi-monopoly situation that Microsoft has established across the corporate computer network system globally.
But what do we do about it, Daniel?
We do lots of things about monopolies. We have lots of powers here in Britain, the European Union, the United States. We have lots of powers to break up monopolies. And we do it with supermarkets if they merge and all sorts of things. So we need the government now to say, we can't take this risk again of a mistake like this being spread throughout the corporate world because of total over-dependence on one particular operating system.
The thing is,
and we need to take action to break it up, because the next mistake might come from a small company. We don't know where the next mistake will come from, but there probably will be another mistake.
But
it can't spread like
this. It wasn't a cyber attack, but it may as well have been.
That's
the thing. It may as well have been a cyber attack, and lives will be lost because of it. I mean, GP surgeries this afternoon are in meltdown.
60% of GP surgeries in England and Wales rely on one system.
And this is the thing, and Daniel's right in terms of monopolies. How have we allowed ourselves to get into a situation where companies, whether it's Microsoft, CrowdStrike, whoever's ultimately responsible, as such, and I know we live in an interconnected world and we're interdependent and the technological advance and all the rest of it, but how did we get into this situation where these companies, CrowdStrike, I think, is a relatively new company. It was set up about 10 years.
Never even heard of them before.
Set up about 10 years ago, I think, and suddenly sort of grew very rapidly. And they've brought a large part of the developed world to a halt. And that, I mean, that simply cannot happen. And whatever that happens, there has to be a contingency plan for the future. I think people have got to look at it, governments have got to get together and say, whatever it is in terms of regulation or splitting up these big, powerful companies, we've got to make sure that there's a system in place, a backup system in place, so if something goes wrong again like this, then it doesn't have anything like the impact.
Hopefully, the one thing this will have proved, Daniel, is that we learn lessons from it and we make sure that it doesn't happen again. We have backup systems in place. But there was a copra meeting this morning, wasn't there? But the Prime Minister didn't bother attending.
Well, I don't know. Well, I think there's a mystique about COBRA meetings, as if you have a COBRA meeting and then something's going to happen, and if the Prime Minister doesn't turn up, nothing is going to happen. What we want, I don't know whether they have me. I am not assured. Whether there's not a political point, any political party, I am not assured or reassured if there's a crisis, and I know there's been a meeting in a particular meeting room. That in itself doesn't cheer me up. I'm interested in actions. And what I want to see here is the way to address this is to disperse the danger by making sure that when similar mistakes happen, they have an effect on, it'll have an effect on some part of the corporate world, but not the whole of the corporate world in the way that this does. So that you disperse the danger a little bit, you put the shock absorbers in. That's better than a sort of contingency and backup type of plan, which is often just a duplication of systems, which would also be affected. Why wouldn't they also be affected? I know banks that have whole empty rooms full of servers and backup systems in case their systems go down. I understand that. But why wouldn't they be affected also? You need to spread the danger by breaking up the monopolies. And I want to see action from the government to do that.
Similarities here with the global financial crisis in 2008, where the banks were, lending irresponsibly, there wasn't proper regulation in place, there wasn't proper oversight, and had a huge impact globally. And we're still paying the price of that 16 years later in terms of the impact of austerity and so on.
One of the interesting
and this is a similar thing, not necessarily long term, but certainly in terms of the immediate.
One of the interesting things I think to come out of this is how our old school systems, i.e. paying for things in cash, call me old-fashioned, and actually doing your job from your place of employment. Lots of IT experts saying today, working from home didn't help the situation because IT specialists couldn't get to an office and sort everybody's computers out at the same time because everybody is working remotely these days.
And it needs a manual fix on every computer, by all accounts.
That's what I mean. That's a manual fix. You can't do it if everyone's working from home. So, going back to the old school's ways, Daniel, is probably a good idea then.
Well, I had a cup of coffee at the House of Lords today, and I tried to pay for it in cash. I tried to pay for it in cash because of this crash. A bit worried about getting my debit card out, and they didn't have any change. So eventually, at the third attempt, it did go through on my debit card, I have to admit. But I did keep the receipt for a change because I'm worried, it could come back, you could be on your statement, they could multiply it by 1,000 times and you wouldn't know. They're there on the statement, you see.
You have a footman or a valet to deal with.
It's ridiculous. We have no support at all in the House of Lords. They don't even have a secretary or anything. It is you do everything.
I'm going to play the world's smallest violin for you, Baron Moylan of Kensington.
Everything yourself. You get no support at all.
I don't know how you manage it.
This is why an elected House of Lords would be a great idea, but very expensive. Because we'd all have to have staff then if we were elected like the MPs.
At least you were in the office. At least you went, and you might have just been having a cup of coffee or a drink, but at least you went in the office. And the fact that we're not working in our place of employment anymore was a huge problem today, wasn't it, Paul? Can we just get back to work now, people?
I don't think it's that straightforward. I think where it works for people to work from home, where it works for the organisation, the employer and the employee, I don't think it's really for anyone else, the law, the government, anyone else to intervene and say, actually, no, we're going to stop that arrangement. I do understand the concerns about working from home in terms of productivity and so on. And I think probably in the public sector, you do need oversight because ultimately, they're public servants. But I think by and large, if you've got an organisation, particularly a commercial organisation, which says, look, we as the employer are happy for people to work from home, it works for those people, it's better in terms of work-life balance and so on, then I don't see really that it's anyone else's place to intervene on this. So I wouldn't want to see this used as a sort of general attack on people working from home.
But it's just like so many places now just don't take cash. I mean, I'm a West Ham fan. I just found out that our club shop now is going cash free.
I was at a football club recently, and I went in the bar and tried to pay with cash, and there were lots and lots of people there. It was before a match, and it was a championship team, so a top level team, and we had a bite to eat as well with a friend, and they said they wouldn't take cash.
I would just hand it back at the end. Just hand the pint back.
Well, I
just say, I'm sorry, if you don't want my cash, then I don't want your pint.
I'd already drunk it.
Yeah, but just give...
I could have just walked out.
Well, you should just give the empty glass back and say, well, I don't...
my old mate Baron Moylan.
I don't want it. I don't want it. Take it back.
Yeah, no.
And here's the plate, by the way. It was quite a decent meal. I'd have paid. I'm still willing to pay for it.
The problem we've got now is the genie is well and truly out of the bottle, isn't it, on this one? I mean, it's going to...
Yeah, what I find works... I'll tell you what I really don't like is when you say, could I have a receipt for the credit card, and they say, oh yeah, I'll give us your email address.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, why on earth would I have to give you my email address for you to give me a receipt, which actually by law, because it's a VAT receipt usually, by law you're required to give me anyway. Why would I have to give you my email address?
Because you have to these days. Everything
How dare you? How dare you?
Can you think of a single
ask for my personal data?
But they do.
In order to give me something?
Yeah.
I know they do.
All the time, in every shop you go in. But it's a single part of your life now.
Now lose my rag then.
It's what, sorry?
I do actually generally, very calmly, in a very lordly way,
I'm sure,
lose my rag at that point.
Yes.
I say, well, I'd like you to write it on a piece of paper then.
Well, good for you.
Give me a written receipt on a piece of paper.
But there isn't a single...
I think for elderly people, this is not...
Yes.
That's like me.
Personally, Daniel. But I think for elderly people, it is a real problem, the cashless society.
It's a real problem for the unbanked. There are a lot of people who don't have banking facilities, and they're excluded as well.
But I think elderly people, even if they do have banking facilities, they're not necessarily tech-savvy. They're not...
They can waive their... It's not the tech. They can waive their credit card. It's the elderly people who are the ones out there with their gold American Express
Sometimes,
cards.
for example, Daniel, when you go to car parks and you can't pay with cash and you have to download an app and you have to pay on the app and you have to do QR codes and stuff like that, that does involve being, savvy around the internet. And I think for a lot of elderly people, it's difficult. It's difficult. There was a story the other day about a lady who couldn't pay, it was on Twitter, a lady who couldn't pay her parking ticket, and she was going to her daughter's inquest, which was happening in 10 minutes' time, and she... Understandably, someone put it on Twitter, she was in a really bad state because she was going to miss the start of her daughter's inquest simply because she couldn't pay by cash. She was being asked to download an app and do all of the things that you have to do nowadays. And we do, I think, as we sort of go forward with technology, which is not a bad thing in itself, of course, you can't hold back the tide of technology. You've got to embrace it and harness it to your advantage. But you've also got to make sure that you don't leave vulnerable and elderly people behind.
Exactly.
And we are doing that, actually.
Yeah.
I think there's a tendency for people... Younger people, 20s, 30s, 40s, are very tech-savvy. This is the only world that they know. To forget that actually people a couple of generations older simply don't have that experience with technology.
But we can do mental arithmetic.